5 men, 4 to 6 weeks, no speaking. That was a standard Australian SAS patrol in Vietnam. Not a few hours of silence, not a day. Weeks, moving through jungle so thick that daylight barely reached the ground. No words, hand signals only. Sometimes not even that. Just eyes, just instinct, just the ability to read the ground beneath their feet the way most people read a page. The Americans called it impressive. The Viet Cong called it something else. They called them Ma Rung, phantoms of the jungle, and they meant it as a warning to their own men. The Australian SAS did not walk through jungle. They read it. Every patrol moved at a speed that felt almost impossibly slow to anyone watching. One step, stop, listen, look, another step. It was the ability to detect a human presence in the jungle before that presence detected you. To notice a broken branch that bent the wrong way. A leaf disturbed from below rather than above. A smell. Unwashed clothing, cooked rice, cigarette smoke, carried on still air 200 meters away. Australian SAS units went into the jungles of Vietnam for weeks at a time, often without saying a single word to one another, maintaining complete silence as they stalked enemy troops through the dark and the heat and the rain. The Viet Cong were exceptional jungle fighters. They had been operating in that terrain for years. They knew every track, every stream crossing, every ridge line in Phuoc Tuy province, and they still walked into Australian ambushes regularly. Even the most experienced Viet Cong infiltrators, men who had spent years learning to move without being seen, could walk into a devastating Australian ambush and never know it was coming. That does not happen by accident. The tracking skills did not appear in Vietnam. They were built over years before the first Australian SAS soldier stepped off a helicopter at Nui Dat. Living in the jungle for months at a time in Borneo in 1965, operating on secret cross-border patrols into Indonesian territory, they learned to track Indonesian special forces through primary jungle for days. They learned what a day-old footprint looks like in different soil types. They learned how disturbed vegetation recovers at different rates and different humidity. They learned how to follow a trail that had been deliberately obscured by a trained enemy, trying his hardest not to be followed. By the time they arrived in Vietnam, tracking was not a skill. It was a reflex. A 5-man patrol would insert by helicopter at treetop height into a jungle landing zone. From the moment they hit the ground, the clock started. They had a patrol area to cover, enemy movement to report, and absolutely no margin for being heard or seen. They would move to their first observation point and wait, sometimes for hours, watching a track, counting footprints, noting the direction of travel, the weight distribution in each step, the time elapsed since the ground was last disturbed. If they found a Viet Cong position, they did not attack immediately. They watched it, counted the men, noted the weapons, mapped the entry and exit routes, then either disappeared back into the jungle or set an ambush and waited. When contact came, they opened up with everything they had, a volume of fire designed to sound like a force 10 times their size, and then they were gone before the enemy could organize a response. The Viet Cong heard that fire and assumed a large force. By the time they organized a reaction, the patrol had already vanished. In 6 years, the Australian and New Zealand SAS in Vietnam conducted nearly 1,200 patrols and inflicted 492 confirmed kills. Their own losses totaled 1 killed in direct combat. 1 in 6 years, 580 men, 1,200 patrols. Their reported kill ratio was 500 to 1. No other unit in Vietnam, American, South Korean, South Vietnamese, came close to that number. And the reason was not firepower. The reason was that the Australian SAS almost never got caught. They saw the enemy before the enemy saw them. Every time, The Americans noticed. The SASR operated alongside American Special Forces and Navy SEALs across the country. Australian SAS soldiers stood in front of American special operators and taught them how to move through jungle without being heard, how to read a trail, how to set an ambush on a path that had been walked 100 times without ever being detected. The Americans were good soldiers, but what the Australians were teaching could not be learned in a training course. It had to be built over years in real jungle against a real enemy who was also trying to find you. The Viet Cong understood this before the Americans did. A former female Viet Cong fighter was asked after the war which enemy unit she feared most. Not the Americans, not the artillery, not the B-52s dropping bombs from 30,000 feet. She said the Australian SAS Rangers, because they make comrades disappear. 580 men, 6 years, one killed in direct combat. She was right to be afraid.